Hello, America, Americans, and names A through Z of the human species body of individuals' bodies. We are in a semi ancient trap. Judge Napolitano is a good man. In other words, I believe, and his sources. But A through Z have stayed roles communicating other things, others, ourselves. Communicating other for our founders and blaming other things, others, ourselves as roles, self valuing that. Where and how it is used remotely. For example, there are all these countries that are in the news and with the subjects of Judge Napolitano, and as sides, as people, including with people torturing, extorting, hurting, and killing each other and everyone around each other since some ancient times, that referred to as ancient times. But the republic we have as America's republic, it has stayed abridged because names A through Z are being and have been used as systems tactically ulterior from its own. I can't go chase down all the other foreign countries involved and their family members, but they have time recorded collusions with the map locations used by the interbranch family members, retired police chiefs from Wethersfield Police, a whole bunch of people tied to them, and to a Kevin Dillon, and a guy who said he was his partner, who was involved with two speech class teachers I had in high school, and other classes teachers I had who have involvement with Washington, D.C., and with the World Trade Center used remotely criminally foreign influence, roles with a whole bunch of natures of fact, predicate acts with facts, methods, self-value to legitimate while legitimizing and pretending not to realize, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature at every location and next to there. And then hyper additionally other ways. Just like at the World Trade Center, the same thing in the Ninth Circuit Court next to it and other spots next to it. Both sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court had and has roles with names all sides of criminal and civil cases in Connecticut through time, and use /S of that location, /S where and how really. That quality of fact should be nature as criminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers too recorded collusions with their difference with all sides of cases and the courts themselves, as in the World Trade Center attack. Proven after they had changed the date on things brought to the court timely in the World Trade Center attack context from inside the court, as people involved also with all names on all sides of that case attached to faked and changed communications and words and roles, force with judges and prosecutors interstates, and with Central Connecticut State University, Trinity College, and UConn people with judges and prosecutors, family members involved with wire crimes of the same house /S and retired police chiefs and people that answer phones and associate with answering phones for police, fire departments. The same countries in the news where they have peace as a value. They have styles, remote uses of their differences, not just the difference between black and white, black pupils. See, even if everyone, even if a majority, even if it's everyone, we address the breaching methods roles, reassigning what black pupils and whites of eyes communicate per nature and per our founders, which is per nature in the Constitution unabridged, and appreciating the hyper additional nature we are this way, which means appreciating how we have not liberated that. And so the syntax, because other has been prevented. In other words, the Constitution unabridged, people talk about the Constitution, their self-value and other things, others ourselves, having been blamed for things our founders communicated to blame on the breaching method like slavery. And they communicated for us to understand how themselves they were fact, cheap in nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved, and how that that was maintained through physical slavery of A through Z, and distinctly too, because it was used as a method of measuring and maintaining through roles with all that syntactically entertained, to survive. Otherwise, that body would be sensed, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. And once you had sustained that, since before modern religious messengers were born, any grouping of countries that comes out of this to try to counter it, its defenses of what it does and speaks while with and as that, it is with and as the names of the human species used as systems tactical ulterior from how nature communicates with the difference between our groupings. Our group difference, no. And because this is the same identity of hyper simultaneous demonstrating to us. That is why we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. While we have eyes distinct from the other species' bodies, but it is also non-distinct from them. It is simultaneous with them per their identity of hyper simultaneous. That is not their species body, is not our species body that assigns such. See, no one could mimic this one identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. It is why and how. Its identity as value is the answer. Its identity to the extent we could discern, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the value of that equally, increasingly value relative to its complete, the part we can't discern. We have the extent of realities we know were true always in the past. We have the extent of realities we know are true now, active and grouped. Now, we have the extent of realities we know are true about the future, again, by its system. I'm not paying attention to what we know about the future because this is recorded with economic. I'm saying about the season's value. Its system unabridged because it wants us and needs us to appreciate the difference between insidious natures or criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, of truth treatments, fact treatments, of right to lie uses, of sequence treatments. So Judge Napolitano and his sources and the news, they have roles with their sources putting fake things as collusions at crime scenes with all sides in criminal and civil cases, including the crime scene of the World Trade Center attack. Their roles with federal agencies and the differences of that or of states' rights is also increasingly people tied to a Mr. Murphy involved with that who went to different campuses. Some may have gone to my campus. I don't even know them. They're repeating fake things as collusions with predicate acts with facts stacked into databases with our side's roles like mayors and people tied to them associated with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in a whole bunch of different countries at Central Connecticut State University and at Trinity College and at UConn, who are connected families through administrations, roles of predicate acts and identity theft, fraud, slanders, has something to do with their syntax with names and with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me all along as victims / hyper victims too. Everyone's repeating fake things to measure and maintain left out. The overt criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of ways the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, is involved in things that we could appreciate where and how. For example, while things are going on as they are reported to be going on and have been going on between Palestine and Israel and the world, and with our uses of our names, A through Z, like America, in other words. It has been through an as systems tactile ulterior from the Constitution's unabridged and appreciation of grounded appreciation of Marbury versus Madison, and why, quote, all appearances of justice must real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. In other words, black people, we know that those forced, original, worse than, were many ways worse than war, counter forced positions, unjust war, forced positions after it that were still sustained. In other words, there's more than there is another name. In other words, we don't even need to make a metaphor or analogy. There is another name with A through Z. The discernment of it begins with where and how the breaching method itself is a scientific value. A human fact human nature breaching method is one of the things that is true always, which what slavery was about, because both nature itself and our founders communicated to us, demonstrated to us, to understand what slavery was about. It was about an entrenched human fact, human nature, torture, extortion, slavery method, and screening the hyperforeign method, using either the guilt of that forced self-valued blame or the guilt of the others. So increasingly, too, people associated with corrections offices and judicial offices of Connecticut have roles of the World Trade Center attack and predicate acts between campuses, inter-campuses and intra-campuses, predicate acts with facts methods, method/S roles. Forgiveness, one of the most important reasons forgiveness, besides all the biological reasons, things like that, the importance of forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method, which is a use/S of roles with itself. One of the things, even with treatments of dependent self-value, dependent treatments of subjects, like with which trials were about, it's a certain nature of and style of shock and awe used to measure and maintain, regardless of who made the witch trials up, what extent. In other words, if they were real or not, what motivated them, regardless of that. True always. One of the things they were about, always, was that human fact, human nature breaching method, that torture, extortion, slavery method entrenched distinctly north and south, northern and southern colonies, and with crazy laws relative to what everyone was saying amongst each other, and regarding the quality of homes, which were already built before America's founders were born. And we know for a torture, extortion, slavery method that forced not just Native Americans, this perfected itself before it was sustained upon Native Americans, but it was just instantly sustained the species body over when it changed. How the ancients demonstrably they followed how and appreciated how there is a hyper difference that is a distinct identity of volume science, distinct from all other volume sciences, including the volume science of subjects and the volume science of verbs. We need more than one name for a verb to appreciate, and what we are appreciating there is the identity of the hyper simultaneous, is the identity of a distinct hyper invisible but still discernible. Again, too, that as which is one of the qualities aspects in nature is unique to that value, which is more than one value of being an identity of for science of as the possession too of why and how, as the cause of why and how our species body and the other species bodies have quality aspects in nature, distinct, non-distinct, simultaneously. This preaching method needs people to jump in and say, oh God. And because there are proofs that ancient pantheism that appreciated the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. This way, hyperditionally, how the sciences appear to share an identity observably and where how they appear not to. That is also a valuable means to discern where how it is about exception nature, distinct from all other identities of volume. And it can't be made up. You can't imitate it. But see, this preaching method knew that, so it made a whole bunch of individual grouped and simultaneous needs at the same time and sustain them. To self-value means to get away with the grouping, imitating it. Justice, freedom, the Constitution unabridged, care for it, love for it. These are styles, uses of, see, this preaching method measured and maintained. Other self-value for uses of, communicated for our founders and measured self-value roles with it. Uses of defenses of titles and differences like that. As the same, getting over on that same black-white conversation. Even the most negative things come with means to discern more an identity, a relationship to that itself that will only stay more and more hyper positive. All exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of either. They are in demonstration of the same thing /s. And there are means to observe too, to discern as well. Rather, Leith of Hadith as an actual scientific value to discern a negative identity of relationship to the assignment, to the hypernative assignment of differences A through Z relative to Earth's a special difference as our own special difference, hyperditionally, distinctly, but also non-distinctly, and simultaneously /hyper-simultaneously. This is what nature shows us, but we are prevented short words by insane people and the differences of them as our own people, as a whole bunch of other countries, as they are actually shared here and there, as overt criminal enterprises, private ones, as the names, with communications roles and news roles. At the same time, collusion /s with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts at the same time, wire crime acts and methods with the police forms, the political families, the names at the elections locations. We can't force the demonstrated what's actually recorded here with the foreign involved. We can't defend ourselves because of the roles self-valued at the same time. They already used differences. They already spoke for the law. They can't defend themselves. And that and us at the same time without forcing, things to be valued the way they are not supposed to be valued. Without self-valuing those very lies and delusions and collusions that were the substance of the fake conversations, like that WFSB pretended with me, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, also with the people next to them and next to WFSB. I mean, next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WTNH that are connected. Also increasingly with a bunch of judges' family members with the same house /s, people that used to live near me and themselves, increasingly involved with foreign countries. In other words, not in other words, they're making fights or people or the opposite. Either way, they just need people to leave out the foreign names involved. Increasingly, their educators are involved, and they're refusing to get on paper because they already used the right to lie to family members about family members through their roles with a whole bunch of people with the natures, whole bunch of different police forms, including the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, recorded self-value used remotely while being self-value, used grouping and having grouped criminal enterprises, encountered things like criminal insidiousness, wrong ass collusion / us with it. That's the real reason why and how there are problems with the kids in New York City. And then as adults, because they are sickly, distinctly victims from the kids at campuses A through Z. And the difference of it is also employed use / S affected by this breaching method / S, with the / S part being locations, areas, and states names at A through Z countries. And the difference. And it effectively used and uses how it knew effectively, properly, that any voice, any individual grouping or altogether coming from this are locations, areas, and states. Self-value roles, being and having been systems tactical terror, from the identity that of relativity to positive and negative, the ways we could discern to an extent, but as that which is beyond it too, because it shows us how we could use that extent too, to assess means to discern, like the value of the seasons here now. But in other words, means out of cause, evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. Do great things for each other. First, we have to do it relative to the foundation at A through Z, being and having been, criminally foreign influence, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. To use that name, pretend it was unabridged or valued. It was never used legitimately. Not one modern country has a name that anyone used properly, unabridged. Otherwise, they were censored, including if it was a majority of people, including if it's everyone. Even when everyone uses their name right, they're blaming other things, others themselves, exactly the way the breaching method wanted and need. And while defending their logic relative to the economics, for example. There's a reason means is a different word than resources or money. I saw somewhere, I believe it was on YouTube, that a governor from Connecticut said that they're paying like $8,000 an hour for helicopters to put out a fire with mountains in between cities and brush fires. And it's not even that high of a mountain. So something, in other words, real logistics would have had a pipe going up to the top as a delivery system to take. If you can get water to the top, in other words, then you can just get around without having to things. And then in other words, then they have resources where they really need it. Unacceptable is at suburbs, let alone cities. Distinctly from, let alone at urban / urban. Harper was designed as an urban / urban, and to then unfold as 2 families and 3 family homes, and rules with the increasing the populations mixed, with all those mixtures and differences used by the breaching method, and roles with it also used by it to screen itself past, active now, and to come, with descriptions leaving out, natures leaving out, because it used and needs the nature of criminal insidiousness itself. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police foreman, I'm not a judge. But there is a Paul Zana who sought me out. I never saw him out in my life. He repeated the word Jew around me. I didn't respond. As the people involved with wire crime action methods with the news and with the agencies, not just the FBI and state police families, people all along Route 3, which is a conjunction to and the conjunctions and adjacents to it, and the difference of that is, in other words, to the state judicial branch offices. Wethersfield Pizza has rules with predicate action with intelligence community at New Britain Superior Court and Hartford Courts and Central Connecticut State University. Wethersfield Pizza and the rules with the people at the at and next to the state judicial branch offices, and their rules with names on off the state corrections offices involved with wire crime acts and methods where they fabricate fake phone transcripts, where they maintain people going before courts as collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news at the same time, and the courts' names and the intelligence tied to them. People next to the corrections, next to the judicial branch office, news and things, planting evidences. A whole bunch of other countries were involved with their family members next to the campuses through time. Increasingly, people tied to teachers I had who had conversations with them. I never had conversations with them. They're planting evidences and having them repeat vague things. Increasingly, people with the name Oliveri and Joshua Stryker are involved with my neighbors past who associated, and people associated with them who are involved with the Robert Rodriguez, who brought up a principal child defenders campus, and one of the ones who brought up, which also police communicated, confirmed, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are people with the name Scalora involved with offenders of kids of various natures. And these are with foreign and domestic medical families, intelligence families, and medical families, fabricating evidences into databases, fake transcripts. They have rules with names on all sides of the criminal, also at the World Trade, involved with the World Trade Center names, the attackers' names, like our country's names. And next to it in the court, Scalora is one of those names that forced Saudis collusions with them and with Mexicans, collusions with Wethersfield police at New Britain locations through time, West Hartford police forms, people all along roads and routes, like in other words. And this is one of the things that connects them. Those involved with the courts and police forms refusing to identify themselves in such ways, roles with leaking. Also, where and how they have people like a Mike Daly. I never had a word of conversation. I swore at him one time because he was faking conversations with me. And he has roles with people from my grammar school, increasingly involved with various natures of organized crime and crime scenes in both sides of criminal and civil cases, and planting evidence on all sides of my house as people I had nothing to do with me. They had tried to make fake exceptions and something to do with their roles with the buildings and locations next to the state capitol as one of the things that connects people connected with this. In other words, they also pretend that we're bringing up their names as a means to pretend that we're in location. In other words, in communication, nature of communication that war. In other words, they already have roles too with assignments of guilt, where they can't defend that and afford ourselves defended from that which forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded and sustained roles, blaming other names and interests, blaming other things, others ourselves for things the breaching method caused, as is still going on. You guys have had other communicators for James Madison, our founders, behind him in his plan. That which George Washington agreed to. That which, and they coupled together. The founders and James, and with James Madison's plan, and George Washington agreeing to use that plan. And we were supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, which would have brought up how everyone was sickly distinctly tortured, extorted, and enslaved. Would have brought up what our founders communicated for us to understand about how that breaching method measured and maintained syntactical roles, entertained, self-value. With with the breaching method of having people hurt each other, use differences the way it needs them used, not just black and white, all natures of difference. It's not by accident all natures of voices for black and white. They have stayed tactical ulterior from that which nature dictates. We do not separate from this subject, like where and how nature shows us. Black and white are the two colors that we have that are the same color eyes at the same time. And there's the exceptions part. Because one of the ways that nature shows us its complete identity, beyond just the extent we could discern of that scientifically. So in other words, when they use names A through Z, our name has not been defended. People are only defending their treatments of, in other words, they're using their knowledge of good and evil when they make subjects treatments. Meanwhile, all the countries, Russians, Ukraine, all these countries are here, shared. China too, per the people in my grammar school, enrolled with a pattern where we never had conversations. The people involved with other campuses, they have make a fake conversation by timing where people are going to walk and have someone say something like that into the air, so there won't be a response. And if there is a response, it will look like they had a communication, because they're putting fake things in databases. Increasingly, an Institute of Living at the Hartford Hospital has rules also with the security and lawyers and judges and prosecutors involved with various natures of predicate acts and organized crimes, with Wethersfield retired police chiefs' families, and ones on my street involved with the confessions of the police over the phones too. But these are police families and roles with judges, family members, prosecutors, family members, and their colleagues and stuff, neighbors, stuff, with the phone companies too. Has something to do with the roles of corners of streets along Walker Hill Road too, near the Hartford, Wethersfield, and borders things, and with the probate judges and concentrated roles with the people with the name Smith and Cololo, involved with Wethersfield police, and judges speaking fake things into records with child offenders, leaders of kids, first force, as time collusions with them, and whiting forensics through time has roles with the same families. And there are people with Quinnipiac University involved with a Mr. Murphy's daughter, involved with FBI, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and foreign countries involved with criminally foreign influence uses of elections locations in Wethersfield. I wouldn't vote there in a million years. Wouldn't entertain. It's originally and still. You guys have other communicated what our founders communicated to understand about how and why the North and South were left with slavery and how it was used. Again, how it was sickly distinctly against everyone too, and how sickly non-distinctly would have been and is value. How everyone's hurt by the same thing that is not that, and other things others themselves have been blamed for what it did and does. But rather than value that positive thing, everyone's self-valuing that while defending, we know about the SP-44. What are you doing with a whole bunch of people involved with computer teachers, intercampuses? Central Connecticut State University has computer people involved with Wethersfield campuses with computer people, and Trinity College with computer people involved with the FBI and foreign and domestic military, and judges' family members with the names that have been planting evidence as fake exceptions and fake ties and natures of ties to me and fake motivations for it. With that, one of the things I shared to them, and there were timed uses of it. There's a Terry Cleesa, and then how they put different name Lewis in there. There's people with the name Lewis too, and there are journalists who graduated through Central Connecticut State University and other campuses that are remain like Trinity College has one, I don't know, associated with a Perone, a Thomas Perone, and there's a Danielle Perone who has roles with state police families, male or female, and at Central Connecticut State University involved. There might be and people at Trinity College involved with federal evidence as crimes and roles with some untimely deaths when I was a kid, and then again through other natures of organized crime roles, identity theft, fraud, slander, fake exceptions planting, of knowing me. And there roles with people with the name Carone, including a Jamie Carone and his educators at Central Connecticut State University, and his roles with people with the name Lombardo and Cololo, further recorded involved with judges and prosecutors and doctors with medical and sexual and digital offenders of kids, including with a proven principal upskirt nature. With the even if that was made up, it's recorded true. He's involved with digital crimes with the kids, and the retired police chiefs involved. I never had a conversation with him. There's a former police chief, Cintron, has roles, a whole bunch of people tied to him. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, influenced by his corruption, and with a whole bunch of other countries demonstrated at the same time. Roles at the corners of streets at Elm Street and Weathersfield and Rocky Hill, planting evidences that has something to do with the roles, planting evidences on campuses. Now these are people who change what's recorded when people catch them with things at the campuses, and then they put charges against people, and they do sick methods of lying to everyone around everyone, and then people are forced to ignore things, like especially where they have people in apartments, let alone tenements, and that being and having been sustained sickly distinctly on New York City. We're supposed to value how we can discern how sickly non-distinctly till we all want and need to counter the same thing, and that's one of the best evidences of it. There are criminally foreign influenced / hyper criminally foreign influenced U/S of all locations /S, and that's why the suburbs look alike in America and in Russia, in the cities, and they're only allowed to unfold that way per laws against everyone, against what they could even speak about or dream about, or be allowed to have been around someone speaking about building homes outside of those. Did you see these suburbs reliant upon food means from other locations? We don't really have care for ourselves. See people in Ohio complaining they get poisoned. They don't really have legal representation. They want and need to separate subjects. You don't separate one thing from the thing that reassigned black and white. And it was not our founders, and it assigned other things, others ourselves, including our founders, blamed right through our schools. Fools. You have the counters to things as collusions. You have a bunch of sick fakes who leak. In other words, a whole bunch of people. I only know this because this Zano family, this Paul Zano, sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has sequence shifts roles, federal evidences crimes roles, child offenders roles, identity theft fraud roles, falsified police reports roles, wire crime acts and methods roles, mail crime acts and methods roles, medicine drug crime roles. At least he knows that's plausible. And their family members and neighbors associated with them, like this Jonathan Mayano, has roles also with I believe his name is Dave Santangelo. I don't know his name. And associated with spots along the Bronx Turnpike with police forms, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and that as evidence is positive, because we're going to have to use as evidence how the law names that countries A through Z cannot defend themselves and their delusions too simultaneously. The difference of that was it's self-valued by themselves. So to be and stay styles at countries A through Z, like Russian Americans, have roles with delusions and criminal, all kinds of natures of organized crime, not just the natures of organized crime with their at medical locations, with psychiatry, right on medical campuses where they can use truths for life. In other words, medical campus should always be loved by everyone and cared for, but not because they have all kinds of natures of organized crime roles there. They have all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, methods, roles, predicate acts with facts methods, mail crime methods, wire crime methods. The difference of their guilt there or the people next to them. The difference is the people with the homes next to them, the businesses, or the people driving by. People with Los Solitos themed, with a whole bunch of people tied to a police chief Cintron and his roles with Mazzucato Bakery and Modern Pastry, with a Jonathan Mayano, and with a Mazzucato paper with their roles with Central Connecticut State University, people planting evidences, predicate acts with facts, collusions, and roles with differences. All these countries in the news, they have collusions here together. The ones killing each other. That's why years before the Ukraine and Russia problems and the Israel and Palestinian killing each other too, I put a counterfeiter because I measured and maintained and counter recorded it. I recorded it. In other words, not trying to. In the path of leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in that context and sense, Connecticut courts and all sides of criminal and civil cases and news and names at campuses have been self-valued roles of predicate acts with facts in those databases relative. They are refusing to identify themselves properly into branch. Wethersfield police forge and switch names just in sequences with the other police forms. And the courts involved, New Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, because once they get on paper, you're going to discern before the World Trade Center attack, they and the FBI and their co-defendants and their family members affected confessions and demonstrations to me. Has increasingly roles of people next to at and all sides of the community center through time, and Wethersfield town offices, and people with the whiting forensics is increasingly involved with people at various natures of crime scenes and body dumping spots, involved with the same house /S, involved with wire crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people involved with their doctors and patients, and fire campuses that were concentrated, involved with in other campuses, but they run in to hide live progressions. They make fake instances, descriptions, and they have, oh, this person says this, or must be this. They're putting fake communications because they already used all kinds of natures of investigators in standing positions as collusion /S with the hyperforeign. Then they needed to hide that. Increasingly, there are all kinds of medical doctors tied to the people at Central Connecticut State University are criminally foreign influence with them, all along Route 175 and Route 3. People involved with predicate acts with facts and forcing people to get the wrong outcome on cases because they're collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts themselves at the same time. The difference of that are the people at the judicial and corrections offices or next to them. Increasingly next to the state judicial branch offices are people that have roles of predicate acts with facts methods behind people's backs because half the time they don't even realize it. They're just putting fake things in databases. They have more tied to the principal child abuser associated with Chris Murphy, because Murphy's one of the names involved with a Rick Sam Faglione, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with a Timothy O'Brien and a Ray Cololo with wire crimes and falsified police reports and fake ties and fake natures of ties to me as collusions with people with the name Brendan Leahy, who I never had a word of conversation with in my life, and his father. And they have women in their family also, or with that name, and others at foreign and domestic, involved with Hartford Hospital, including lawyers involved with them, and their patients and the collusions with them has something to do with their roles on off the community center increasingly, and their roles with judges and prosecutors, personally and professionally, speaking fake things in records and changing what is actually recorded digitally, as they had roles also timed, forcing a principal child abuser proven, and they have roles of 1 years ago. And there are more names then and now involved with it because there are other natures of organized crime. There are women with the and men with the campuses particularly distinctly with it, and with the courts. There are black and white female judges involved with police forms forging and switching names. Has something to do increasingly with their roles with East Hartford locations, and that are tied to the courts that have been putting collusions at crime scenes, and with the differences of sides, or all exception nature, they've been used to pretend other with. Fear God, because way worse. Predicate acts with facts method are being perpetrated by the people involved with the prisons and the courts, and the difference of that, because they've been torturing the people there to keep their mouths shut. Like the people involved with the serial killers body dumping spot are the ones involved with the next to it are ones involved with predicate acts on my street through time from other areas, and with the house/s involved with wire crimes, with the police forging and switching names, and roles with their Facebook and the Facebook page of Judge Napolitano. Facebook also has rules changing what's digitally recorded with child offenders, sexual and medical and intercampuses, and planting fake motivations. All I have to do is change it, is follow mandated law. Get the Weathersfield police on paper, one name and sequence with the court's names and the sources. Go, let's get them on paper. Or make me beg. I don't play more games. Get on paper. So I was a kid, I asked you guys. Fear.